Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video we're going to do some more writing feedback. And happy to say we have another writing task 1. I do enjoy these writing task 1s. They're far trickier for me to check than writing task 2s, but it's all good. Okay, as always with writing task 1, academic, we always want to make sure that we understand the data that we're working with. I'd like to spend, in a perfect world, I would spend 30 minutes looking at this data. Of course, in the real test, you have 20 minutes to do everything, to check the data, to write your task, to check your task, and so on. But okay, let's take a bit of time to look at this. So the table below highlights data on the number of travellers. The table below highlights data on the number of travellers using 3 major German airports between 2007 and 2012. So we have 2 years, 2007, 2012, or that's the time between those years, but we have each year. So 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. So we have 6 years. Great. And 3 different airports. Dusseldorf, I don't speak German at all, sorry about that. Dusseldorf, Frankfurt, and Berlin. Unfortunately, I can't highlight this information because it's in a picture. Maybe I'll just put my mouse there so you can see. I don't know if it's visible. Dusseldorf, Frankfurt, Berlin. Okay. So, let's just read that again. The table below highlights data on the number of travellers. So the number of travellers means how many travellers. We know that travellers use airports, right? Airports are places where you have flights from one place to another place. So 3 airports in Germany. There's Dusseldorf, Frankfurt, and Berlin-Tegel. And we are interested in how many travellers there were. Okay. So thinking about key features here. So quite a lot of data points. In total there are, 3 times 6. That means that we have 18 different data points. We can't cover all 18 data points. So the first thing we have to think about is the key features. What are the key features? And whenever we think of key features, usually we think of like highest or lowest. Okay. So let's look at the end period, 2012. It's clear that Frankfurt had the most travellers. And does that stay consistent throughout all of the years? 2011, Frankfurt was the most. 2010, Frankfurt was the most. 2009, it wasn't the most. 2008, it was. And 2007, it was. So one key feature here, one noticeable feature, one key takeaway is that Frankfurt was the most popular airport, or Frankfurt had the highest number of travellers in all years except 2009, where Dusseldorf had more. Cool. So that's one key feature, the popularity of Frankfurt. So we'll speak about that one. Now, anything else? Dusseldorf is... Let's check Dusseldorf and Berlin. 2007, Dusseldorf had more. 2008, Dusseldorf had more. 2009, Dusseldorf. 2010, Berlin. 2011, Berlin. 2012, back to Dusseldorf. Okay, so that's an interesting thing, that battle for second place. Where at the beginning of the period, Dusseldorf was the second most popular airport in terms of travellers. But then from 2010, Berlin became more popular and now they are approximately the same. So I think that would be the key feature 2 that I would talk about. So my introduction would be a very direct, blatant paraphrase of the table below highlights data on the number of travellers. Something like the table gives information about how many travellers used 3 different airports in Germany between 2007 and 2012. The airports are Dusseldorf, Frankfurt, and Berlin. That would be my introduction. Then my overview would be something like throughout this period, Frankfurt, with the exception of one year, Frankfurt served the highest number of travellers during this period, while Dusseldorf and Berlin competed or were close in terms of numbers or something like that. I'd mentioned something about the second place is kind of close between Berlin and Dusseldorf. Then body paragraph 1, I'd give more details on Frankfurt, statistical information, specific details, and then body paragraph 2, I would go into the data comparing Dusseldorf and Berlin. So that's how I would structure it with this 4-paragraph approach, because I know in 2024 everybody loves the 4-paragraph approach. Let's see if that's what we get from our candidate. So let's get into the candidate's writing. So I've tried to make this bigger so more people can see. Okay, the table compares, it does, yeah, 3 different airports, Dusseldorf, Frankfurt. Oh, please, no, please don't tell me we have this Frankfurt. Oh. Okay, is it a big problem? Well, as a teacher, it's probably a bigger problem for a teacher than it is for an examiner. An examiner might say, okay, they misread it. It doesn't majorly affect the details. They just misspelled Frankfurt, fine. For a teacher, this is where teachers go crazy, because we see but it's written here, Frankfurt. We can see it. It says Frankfurt. Just copy it. Dusseldorf is misspelt. Ooh, this does become a problem. Dusseldorf is misspelt. So there's no reason, there really is no reason to misspell words that are in the question. And for a teacher, this would drive me crazy. As an examiner, it's okay. It's not such a big deal. It can sometimes be the difference. If you're on the border between like a 6 and a 7, sometimes that repeated spelling mistake could be the difference. But as a teacher, this drives us crazy, because what it signals to the teacher when the student does this, the student is kind of saying, you know what, I don't care about my IELTS. And so the teacher puts this stuff together. The teacher tries to, guide the student and help the student through this task. And when the teacher puts a lot of effort in and the student doesn't even spell names of cities which are written in the task, for a teacher, it drives us crazy. For me, I would immediately give this work back to the student and say, please check the spelling. And I won't check it until you fix this. As an examiner, okay, it's at the end of the day, it's your IELTS test, not mine. And if you don't care about how you spell words that are in the question, that's your decision. Some toxic reverse psychology. But okay. So what? Big deal. The candidate misspelled a couple of words. Is it a problem? No, let's check. The table compares 3 different airports, Dusseldorf, Frankfurt, and Berlin Tegel, yes. In terms of, nice. Well done, candidate. In terms of the number of the users. I'm not a lover of users. Sure, people use an airport. Maybe users is okay. I don't love it. An airport user. Passengers might be fine. You could change travellers to passengers. That would be fine. Okay, overall, good signposting, but we have the overview. Nice. There was a significant increase. Oh, beautiful. In the number of all airports visitors towards the end of the period. Is that true? So, was there a significant increase in 2011, 2012? Not in all. So candidate says towards the end of the period, and that, to me, that feels like the last 2 years. Now, if the candidate means just the last year, then state that in the final year of the period, because towards the end feels broader. So towards the end, you know, there wasn't an increase in Dusseldorf in 2011. There wasn't a significant increase in Berlin in 2011. If we mean towards the end is 2010, then that's not true because Dusseldorf 48 falls to 37. And if we mean towards the end is just the final year, then this information isn't true because Berlin didn't increase between 2011 to 2012. So while I like the language, significant increase in the number of all airports visitors towards the end of the period, it's not strictly true. I know you could say, well, what I mean is between 2009 to 2010 in Berlin, and I mean between 2011 and 2012 in Dusseldorf. But for me, nah, that doesn't check out. I can't say it's precisely accurate that there was a significant increase in all airports towards the end of the period, because there are different periods where the increase happened, and the writing suggests that the increase happened more or less at the same time. With the Frankfurt, not the, just Frankfurt, experiencing the greatest rise. 51 to 69, absolutely. Yep, that's true. Notably, nice. I like notably. Notably, not the Frankfurt, but just Frankfurt. Notably, Frankfurt was also by far the most popular airport. Okay, by far. Not a lot of people know how to use qualifying adverbs before superlatives. You know, by far the most popular. Not a lot of people know this stuff, and I love it when candidates use this in their comparatives to make them more precise. So, kudos, bravo. Was also by far the most popular airport in all years, with the only exception of 2009. Yeah, good. When Dusseldorf was preferred the most. No, not preferred. When Dusseldorf served more passengers. You know, not was preferred the most. It's not a case of people preferring airports. It's just the number of airports, number of passengers that they serve. So not preferred. Interestingly, the same number of travellers with two L's is fine in British English. Interestingly, nice use of the adverb, but do we get something interesting here? Interestingly, the same number of travellers using Berlin Tegel Airport was reported in the second half of the time frame. Same as what? The same number of travellers using Berlin Tegel Airport was reported in the second half. There's nothing to compare it to. If you say the same number, you know, I have 3 mobile phones and I have the same number of tablets. Same number means 3. But there's nothing here. So this is a dodgy reference. The same number, I don't know what the same number refers to. So that's a problem. Maybe candidate means in 2010, 11, and 12. Okay. So interestingly, Berlin served the same number of passengers in the final 3 years, or something like that. So I don't know if is that really a key? It could be for me, that's not a key feature. The two key features are that Frankfurt remained the most popular, and Dusseldorf and Berlin were kind of neck and neck for the period. But okay, let's see if we get data now to support one key feature. Probably the key feature is either that Frankfurt had an increase or Frankfurt was the most popular airport. So we should get some data to back this up. The Frankfurt, not the Frankfurt, just Frankfurt, received relatively more visitors not relatively, progressively more visitors. So if you mean it went up and then it went up again and then went up again and then went up again, that's progressively more visitors, not relatively more visitors. So just incorrect word here. More visitors for most years. Again, be specific. Actually, it's for all years. So progressively more for all years. Or do you mean relatively more than the other airports? It's not clear what you mean. So I can guess, but I can't be sure if you mean progressively more or relatively more than the others. It's just not clear. The number of travellers per year with the help of this airport is totally. I don't want to be critical. We just don't need it. The number of visitors, the number of travellers per year stood at. I like this stood at. Nice. So at 36.5 million in the initial year. I don't like initial. First is fine in the first year. Or just say in 2007. We want to be as clear for the reader as possible. And by stating 2007, great. It's clearer than the initial year. Initial isn't terrible. Certainly not terrible, but yeah. And this was followed by constantly increasing, a constant increase or a progressive increase. I don't know, followed by constantly increasing just sounds unnatural, reaching an all-time high. But good use of all-time high, but we need that article, an all-time high of 69.5 million. And notice the candidate uses the point here, the decimal point, and then uses the comma here. Now, I believe this candidate is from Uzbekistan, and as I understand, they don't use this decimal point in Uzbekistan, they use the comma. But we have to be consistent. So I know it's only a tiny point, but, use the point there. Be attentive. Care about your work more. Take more pride in your consistency. Okay, in the final year. Okay, so we do get some detail here. Would I have structured it the same way? I would have just made it a bit easier to say, like, for 5 of the 6 years, Frankfurt served the highest number of passengers, with the exception of 2008, where Frankfurt served 41.9 million compared to 2009, where Frankfurt served 44.4 passengers compared to Düsseldorf, which had a slightly higher number of 48.2. So it doesn't matter how I would word it. I'm not writing this task myself. But okay, we do get some data to back up this one key feature. One thing I'm not sure of is why this paragraph is so long and this paragraph is so short. The balance just not sure. And also, this looks like quite a long bit of writing. We're over 200 words, aren't we? 261. So quite a lot of words. 200 for me I would try not to write more than 200 words, but okay. Second key feature, with regard to, like it a lot. With regard to the remaining 2 airports, Düsseldorf and Berlin-Tegel, their figures showed comparatively varying patterns. Is that explanatory? Maybe. Well, 27.2 million visitors used Düsseldorf in 2007. That of Berlin-Tegel presented. So I don't know about this that of and presented. That's not really the right verb. Do airports present passengers? I don't know. The lowest point of all time. Not of all time, is it? Of all time means like since the beginning of the universe. The lowest point of all time in the same year. Okay. Just slightly losing the reader a little bit. The figure of the former here is Düsseldorf, good use of reference language. Former grew noticeably, hitting its peak of 48.2 million in 2009, but it saw a staggering decrease to 37.1 million. 48.2, a staggering decrease? I don't know if that qualifies as a staggering decrease. Going from 48 to 37, going 27, 36, 48 to 37. For me, that's a noticeable pullback, but it's not a staggering decrease. So not quite precise with staggering decrease. I like the language. I just think it's not perfectly used. So I'm going to color that orange. And a further decline, so just article problem there, and a further decline to 33.2. Again, notice the no full stop, no full stop, no full stop. Candidate is using commas here. Okay, not a big deal. Further decline to 33.2 million after 2 years. Full stop. In the last year, this number stabled a recovery. Now, it sounds strange to me to stable a recovery. Staged a recovery works, but not stabled a recovery to 45.6 million. So let's check out if that is true. Did it recover to 45.6? Yeah. Further decline. Yeah, okay, fine. Similarly, the quantity of Tegel users skyrocketed to 39.9 in, not until. Yeah, it's 26 to 39. That's kind of skyrocketing. Kind of. 26 to 40. It's certainly a meaningful increase. Yeah. I like skyrocketed as a bit of language. To 39. And notice the candidate sometimes puts the M for million, but here's just decided not to. And again, it's another sign that candidate just isn't very attentive, isn't very careful. Maybe the candidate just doesn't care very much about it. To me, it's a sign, because I know that if this was like something, if I needed to pass an exam and it really mattered a lot to me and I was going to spend a lot of money on passing this exam, I would make sure that these details were right. I would make sure that I spelt the words in the question correctly. I would double check that. I would make sure that I was consistent with my full stops or my commas. I would make sure that I'm consistent with adding that M or not adding that M. Candidate's just forgotten to use it here. And you might say, oh, big deal, Glenn, it happens, the candidate is a human. Sure, but I feel like if it was me and I really needed it, I would check this information before submitting. But okay. Sorry, I don't want to appear negative, but I just like, the details matter. And if you don't care, yeah, nobody will care. Okay, in 2009. Maybe even by 2009, but I don't like until. In contrast, this number rose again to 43.3 million in 2010. A figure that then remained unchanged for the next couple of years. 3 years, actually, not couple of years. And you could be precise, the figure that remained unchanged until the final year of the period, 2012. Okay. So, it's going to be... Let's give some marks for this. Just 1 second. Right, so I think for task response, I think we can award the 7 here. I do think the key features have been skillfully selected or appropriately selected, and they have been well explained. There are a couple of points where I think, like, maybe I would have explained that differently, or that isn't exactly like 100% precisely accurate, but I do feel like there is enough, this candidate has used good data to support. They have presented a clear enough overview of the key features. So for me, task response 7 is absolutely fair. Coherence and cohesion, I think there is enough for an 8 there. There are a couple of things that, yeah, actually, yeah, it's the only thing I maybe don't like is the balance. Just, body paragraph 1 is so short, and then body paragraph 2 is so long, and, you should only write 150 words, or at least 150 words, and going to 250 just feels a bit long. So maybe it's not quite as concise as it could be. But in terms of the development, the signposting language is beautiful, notably overall, with regard to the former. All of that is very, very good stuff. So coherence and cohesion for me is 8. lexical resource. For me, there's enough for an 8. It's not always like 100% precisely used, but using those terms like by far as a qualifying adverb, by far the most popular. I don't like this like preferred the most, not quite right. I didn't feel like staggering decrease was really accurate. Skyrocketed, it's a good bit of language, but kind of is. Stable to recovery is just kind of a little bit odd. But for me, there are enough like supernatural terms in there. The candidate has really, really done a good job of learning this vocab. They don't always activate it in the most precise way, but the candidate does demonstrate a very, very rich lexical resource. So bravo to you there. Grammatical range and accuracy. We do have mistakes with articles. A lot of... Oh, actually, maybe... Do I want to pull lexical resource down to 7 for the misspelling? Nah, I won't do that. So punctuation here is a little bit inaccurate in GRA, where we have sometimes the comma, sometimes we don't have the comma. That's kind of a problem. Then we get the few mistakes with articles. But overall, the work is, we get a nice variety. We get a lot of past simple. We get passive, was reported, was followed by, more passive. It is academic in terms of its style. Grammatical features are academic. Comparatively varying patterns. Rows again, cool. Remained unchanged, all good stuff. I know that's partially vocab. Yeah, I think I kind of would the 8. Just a couple of those minor errors with grammars, with articles, and I don't like, the comma instead of the full stop. If you used commas everywhere, maybe that would be okay, but you use the full stop here. It's not a big deal, but okay. But yeah, a couple of those mistakes with articles, for me, that's enough to pull it down from a 9. So very, very strong performance from the candidate. I feel like maybe just being a bit more careful with the precision of the way that you explain the details. Don't be afraid to use numbers like years. If you're not sure, if you say like toward the end of the period, that's a little bit vague. Maybe try to be more precise, like in the final 2 years of the period. So a little bit more precision with the details could certainly boost your task response. So overall, for me, this deserves a score of 7.5, but the candidate is very, very close to an 8, and just a little bit, I would expect the candidate to get an 8 for this, with just a little bit of improvement in task response. Everything else, great. Be careful with some of your language, like skyrocketed, staggering, decrease. It's amazing that you have all of this lexical resource. It's great, but just make sure that you are activating it appropriately. If it's like a meaningful fall, that's not the same as a staggering decrease. I know there is a subjective element to it, but for me, let's just look at the data again. Dusseldorf 27.2, 36.4, 48.2, and then going back down to 37.1, it's not a staggering decrease. Going down to like 20 million, that would be a staggering decrease, but this is a meaningful drop. So great that you have this lexical resource, but just be careful with how you use it. Make sure that you're using it more precisely. But okay. Enough from me. Overall 7.5. Very, very, very good piece of writing. I would also say, as a bit of advice, please do take care about the way that you spell things, right? We all make spelling mistakes. I make spelling mistakes. You should see me trying to write the words broccoli. Occasionally broccoli. I make mistakes with these bits of language, with my spelling from time to time. Privilege. Always make a mistake when I'm writing the word privilege. However, when words are given in the question, there is no reason to misspell them. Anyway, enough of my criticism. I'll leave it there for now. I hope you found this breakdown of the candidate's writing useful. Always nice to get some writing part 1. If you have any comments, if you disagree with any of my marks or anything you want to add, of course, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. I'll be back with more videos very, very soon. If you'd like your own IELTS writing check, or if you'd like a speaking check with feedback, you can apply for this in my Telegram channel. A link to the Telegram channel is given in the description below. But for now, I'll leave it there. Have a wonderful Saturday, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.